Hi, trail people. I'm Leah Yingling, and you're listening to the Trail Network podcast. I'm joined by co-hosts Rachel Drake, Hillary Yang, Katie Asmith, and we tell the untold stories in the trail running community and highlight incredible people making meaningful change. Today, we chat with Carolina Rubio-MacWright. She's based in New York City. She's an immigrant. She's an advocate for immigrant communities and marginalized populations. She's a lawyer. She's a mom. She just does it all. And she most recently ran UTMB, finishing in just over 45 hours. Today's podcast is one of my favorites. She tells us all about the organization she's involved with, how we can make meaningful change in our communities, and how we can make trail running a better and more inclusive space. We also get to hear all about her journey, closing the loop at UTMB. I hope you enjoyed this conversation as much as I did. Hello and welcome to the Trail Network podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Leah Yingling. Today I'm joined by one of my co-hosts, Rachel Drake. And we get to have Carolina Rubio-MacWright on with us today. Carolina, I first met you at Western States a few years back and was extremely inspired by your story, your involvement in the sport. I feel like you're one of the people in the trail running space that wears a million hats. And from the outside perspective, it looks like you wear those hats extremely well and you show up for all the people that mean a lot for you in the community. So I'm really excited to dive into the conversation today. You're a lawyer, you're an advocate for immigrants in the sport, you're a trail runner, you're a mom, and you just finished UTMB like 3 days ago. So I'm really excited to hear more about all those things I mentioned, but also your journey to UTMB and your journey back home from UTMB. So welcome to the podcast, Carolina.
Aw, thank you so much. I'm a big fan of both of you personally and of the podcast. So thank you for having me.
I wanted to add to your list of hats. Just also, I think you're just like such a generous and amazing friend. Like I think we've only met in real life twice, and I remember I think the second time one of your kids gave Lewis a little New York City taxi car, and it's still his favorite toy. So just like sweet, generous little things that you do for the people in your life.
Oh, but you are also so generous, Rachel. You had not even met me and you were like, I have a vest. Because I went online and I was like, oh my God, I don't know what vest to use. Like they all seem too big. And you went all the way and searched for a vest that you had and you brought it to Western States Camp. And it was just such a sweet thing to do. Knowing that you had Lou there and you had so much going on and you were training and it was just such a I think that to me, that's such the epitome of trail running and the community and how, I think when I went to Western States, I was very skeptical because of all the things that you hear. And it was completely the opposite. People were so generous and so kind and so loving. And, yeah, it's so special to be part of that. And to also try to push the space so that it could continue to be that for everybody. Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, good old Osprey pack. It'll last you forever.
Yeah. Still use it.
Carolina, you talked a little bit about getting involved in trail running in Western States Camp a few years back. I'm curious, as somebody, you're a city dweller in New York City, really involved in your community there. How does one who lives in New York City get involved in trail running? And then also, I'd love to hear more about how you've spread trail running to those in your community there.
Yeah. So I actually now live in the burbs of New York City. So while I still work in the city, I live outside. So I do have trails in New Jersey. But when I started first trail running in 2019, I did it at Rob Quar's camp. And it was my first trail run. And I didn't even own trail shoes. And I had a small panic attack at the top of Humphreys because I was like, oh my God, I'm going to die. I have children. I can't die. Um, and I fell in love with the sport, but then with the pandemic, I kind of really started running, trail running really in 2022, like by the end of 2022. Um, And I just like dove deep, like a good person with ADHD. I'm like, I devoured every information, knew every character, podcast, race. And so I feel like I have very quickly ascended to now UTMB from like local 50Ks. But it's just like typical of me to end up here. Yeah.
Wow, that's such a success story for any of the newcomers to the sport. I know we have a lot of beginner trail runners on the podcast here. To hear that you have not been involved in the sport for too long and you've already been able to conquer both Western states and UTMB in that short time, and then also have such an impact and profound impact on the community, I think speaks volumes to, yeah, how much you've dove in the last couple of years.
Yeah. I mean, I I say this a lot, and it's really, I feel freedom only in trail. Like, I think that there are limitations on road running, and I did Ironmans, and I've been a runner since I was 7. So like running has always been the place where I feel truly myself, where I can jump on a rock or stop and take a picture or like grab a bug and sort of be that kid essence of who I feel like I couldn't be as a kid because of living in Colombia and in civil war. But also, I think being a lawyer and being a mom and the expectations of what we should be, right? Even on road, I feel like it's just different on the trails. Like, you can be whoever you want. You can stop. There's no, I'm not competitive like you guys. So I think trail running for me is sort of like a different thing, that it is about who I collect, the stories I collect on the trails, and the things I experience and my brain experiences. So it's such a privilege to be able to do that,
Truly. I love that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Carolina, I think you had a post just this past summer just talking about immigrants in general, and like their space in the trail. And you said immigrants don't have the privilege to dissociate. So we are experts at crisis handling and resilience. And I think that's a really beautiful sentence. And I think it reflects everything that you just said. Can you talk a little bit about advocacy in the immigrant space, and then how that translates in the trail running arena and how you've experienced it?
Yeah. So I migrated when I was 20 years old, and I was in law school in Colombia and in art school. And so when I came to this country, my first summer of law school, I spent it in the border doing work in Mexico and the US. And that sort of really dictated my career choice. I just was like, I want to spend, I saw a detention center and really sort of heard stories that made no sense, of people who the difference between them and me was simply that I had parents that had money, and that was it. And it was a very similar story of journey of finding freedom and finding safety. And so since then, I've always been going to the border and doing a lot of different advocacy and representing people, whether in detention centers, in court, in all sorts of different places. I've sort of gone through the entire gamut of immigration law representation. And, and while I did business immigration, like, I was always impressed by the people that would like walk from Guatemala all the way to the US, and with nothing, not knowing the language, not knowing survival skills, like going through the night without headlamps, just navigating the scariest jungle, El Darien, which is in Panama, starting in Colombia and Panama. And so I feel like, to me, it was very life altering to meet people that went through all of that and then have their visa denied or have to live in the shadows. And so I've dedicated my life to really making sure that people are represented. But I did work in the Hill and realized that laws are not really going to change, because the system was built this way in order to really abuse workers. We're not paying them what they deserve. And so it's like a bigger part of just capitalism. And so this is when I started building my nonprofit. And so Touching Land is where we teach immigrant rights through somatic practices. But it's really about reminding people of their power and that they have inalienable rights, which are rights that every human being has, whether it's codified or not, right? Because if you look back, slavery was legal, right? All of these atrocities and things that we can't even fathom were legal. And so legality is not really the compass that I go by, and that I try to teach people not to go by, but to follow their gut and try and recognize like what is right. Because if we are able to follow that, then we're able to build the world that we all deserve and not the world that we're handed. So I build touching land, and we used clay mostly as a means of kind of this idea of you have the same amount of clay and you can build it in different ways, and you imagine something in your head and then you have it in real life. So it's this idea of creating something and recognizing that you have the capacity to create something, or like visualizing a race. And so, after doing clay and doing food, we have salsa, Fourth Amendment salsa making classes as well, where we teach workers, street workers, and we bring them into businesses. And it's all about building community and sort of making the other really demystify the other, and being like, oh my God, that's such a nice lady. Because it really doesn't take as much to take that fear away. It's really like the humanity. As soon as you get to that humanity level, and I'm sure you guys see it in like your practice in the hospital, and where you're afraid of something and then you recognize, or others, and you recognize that once you see the humanity, it's really easy to then no longer fear, but to actually have something in your head like Muhammad is really nice. So I'm not sure that the media is right, or this article should be correct. And so then we moved on to running, and it's been amazing, because like running has given me so much that I want others to experience how much running has given me.
I love that so much. And I feel like that is just a beautiful lens to look at empowerment. And I love the incorporation of art there too. Did you have a background in art prior to starting your nonprofit? Because I think there's a lot of people out there with creative minds, creative outlets, but don't know really how to mobilize it into meaningful movements. And I think you've really represented how to do that in your community, but then it's also grown well beyond that. So I'd love to hear you talk about how you kind of nurtured that in such a way to make it grow the way it has.
Yeah, I mean, I went to art school, so I actually have a BFA, and then went to law school. And I think my creativity is my strongest suit. Even in the courtroom, like I would always be very creative, and it's performance. It's really like how believable is my story. And so it's really art. And so I went to art school, and I really felt like, for instance, clay is very forgiving, and there's beauty in the imperfections, and it's such a lovely material that is really good as an introduction, versus like figure drawing or still life, which is super frustrating, because like you have this expectation of perfection, and in clay the imperfection is actually more beautiful than the perfection. And so super successful doing these workshops. I started working with Central St. Martin University in London, doing a lot of collaborative work, all about building community and showing opportunities for conviviality, and just this idea of, like we did one specific workshop where we used plates, because plates are equalizing, and told people to imagine like a border of tension in their lives. And we had people sit there for like 3 hours and just like draw and just escape themselves in this place of creativity. And so it's been really beautiful to see what comes up for people in these spaces. Specifically, with clay, we started doing the work mostly in nonprofits that were dingy spaces. And then I wanted to bring them up another level. So we started going to clay studios in the city, very like prestigious, very beautiful studios. And we started bringing the women there and the men there. And it was beautiful to see how they would enter the space like very small, and just kind of not making any eye contact and kind of trying to be invisible. And then towards the end of the workshop, they would come in with ownership, and they'd be telling people where the bathroom was and here's where things are. And just like this sense of ownership and belonging that was just so beautiful. And we started mixing classes. So we started bringing like very rich white citizens, and we would sit them with the immigrants, and we would sort of create a situation where it would be equalizing, but also an opportunity to share similar experiences. And it would then lead to mobilization on the side of the white women, local wealthy people, to make sure they're paying their workers properly, make sure that they're giving them metro cards, make sure, the average student that we had was making $8 an hour in New York City, which is absolutely atrocious, but they didn't know any better, right? And so in the classes, we would teach them about their rights. We'd make sure that they understood what a warrant looked like. They would understand, how to have a conversation with your boss in order to negotiate for a better pay, or call your boss if there's any sort of abuse. And so just teaching them, I found when I worked in the Hill that there was going to be no changes. And so I figured the best measure is preventative measure. And so making sure that people understood their rights. So we started doing these workshops, not just in New York City, but actually at the border. And so I spent a lot of time at the border, not just teaching moms, but we started teaching the children their rights, because the moms were in such crisis that they couldn't really retain information. So we started doing these fortune tellers of symbols, and playful around their rights, about having access to libraries, going to parks, doing all sorts of really fun tools of engagement and education. And it was super successful, because kids would land in Dallas and would know that they could go to a library and get a library card. They would know they'd have access to school, that they could show up at a hospital and they would be helped. It's been really beautiful to learn from people, and to find ways of engagement that is exciting, like the ice cream truck of rights, which we had after the pandemic, with 24 flavors of rights, from Stop Rum Raising the Rent to Not Without My Lawyer Fudge. And it was like I had this idea for like 7 years, but nobody would eat up until 7 years had passed and they finally got it. And we took an ice cream truck. And so we actually we focused on eviction rights and on immigration rights, and also access to hospitals, because after COVID, so many people died just not going to the hospital. And we had actually 2 students that passed. And so this was a beautiful way of interacting. So we actually did a jingle in Spanish and in English, and like we gave away ice cream and these flavors. And it was all just such a beautiful way of engaging people in the community, meeting them where they're at, so that we could educate them on the fact that they couldn't get evicted, like something so simple, but giving them information with QR codes that would then lead them to the pages of resources of information. So yeah, so like I live in this like weird space where I call it the estuary, which is the convergence between law and art, and now running. And it's this place where, yeah, like creativity, like the options are endless, and it's about building community and about making sure people understand their rights as human beings, and that we all, to me, have a duty to push boundaries if we want to make this a better place.
That's so beautiful. I think there's also this added, I mean, you're educating, you're providing people with a creative outlet, and now like physical activity. And I think also like, my medical brain is kind of ticking here, but thinking about just the high level of stress that so many of your students are probably under. And so equipping them not only with the skills to navigate the environment they're in, but also like these kind of coping mechanisms through art and through running to just express themselves and kind of have like an outlet for what I imagine is a very high level of stress.
Yeah, for sure. We actually did a 10-week course with a mindfulness expert. And so during the pandemic, we essentially taught them ways of stress reduction, and sort of like recognizing what to do. And so it was really useful to do just like a mindfulness course with our students during COVID. It was online, so it was, obviously hard, but we had cooking classes, we had dancing classes, and just whatever to help them just not sit in that stress. Yeah. And I think for me personally also, like I run every morning early in the morning, and it sets the tone for my day, and it allows for all my stress and anxiety and everything to sort of go away. So I do feel like it is, we're providing tools that will hopefully, and I hear from all of them years later, and they're like, I have a better job and this is what I'm doing. And like that's the goal, right? The goal is for them to continue to climb and continue to help others, so that, they remind themselves of their power. I hate the word empowerment because it sort of assumes that you're giving them something. And I like to think of it as we're reminding them of their power, because it is theirs, and it's just like awakening in them. So yeah, it's been a gorgeous journey in that it's been really lovely to see what is needed and then stay nimble enough as an organization to then sort of merge into something and then be able to give it to the people in the moment that they needed.
I love that so much. And I love your reframing of empowerment, because it's very much like that action verb and like almost the noun in that sentence of like who's empowering. No, it's like the people whose power it does belong to, which is really, that's a really beautiful perspective. If you could like envision a world where you bring these same initiatives to the trail running space, where do you think the largest need is from your perspective? Because I know there's many needs, there's many gaps, and I think trail running is lacking in a variety of ways. And that's surfaced a lot, in recent years. And I think there's for good reason. There's been a lot of surfacing of, the needs for marginalized populations. Yeah, if you could envision, your ideal world for this space, what would that look like?
Oh man. So before before the elections, I was actually really hoping to work in California specifically with the farm workers, because they are a very forgotten group of people who are literally sustaining the production of vegetables and fruits in our country. And there's a specific section of California that has tons of abuse. There's a lot of food deserts, and these workers are actually making a line for food banks, which to me is just like, oh my God, it's really awful. And so, I mean, I think that the trail running is such a gift. And for me, as immigrants, specifically like South American, Central American people, we're so close to nature, and we're taught to think of ourselves as integrating, like we're part of nature. We're not separate from nature. And so not having this connection with the earth is really sort of awful for our spirit. So people that live in cities that are Latinos, or I think it's really hard to feel fully ourselves because we're not surrounded by nature. And so I wish that people would be building more community connections, so that it doesn't take a lot to I run, so the running rights and land program was started last year, and thanks to a grant that was given, like some money that was given to us by Hoka. But it essentially started as a result of the huge migrations that were happening and the busing that was happening from the border into Chicago, New York, and DC. And so we were seeing a lot of specifically Black men that were treated like crap. And so I started running with them. I started collecting shoes. I've been collecting shoes and sending to the border since forever. And so like my running club would always, I have a basket outside my house. Everybody drops shoes there that are no longer needed. I bring them to the border. So now I started bringing them into the city, into shelters that I was helping at. And I started running with these group of men, and I would start sharing resources around. And then I realized that that's such a wonderful way of teaching independence around the city, right? Because most people would just stay around a 2 block area because they were scared. And so we were like, no, it's not scary. Come this way, because then you have more resources. There's this nonprofit that can help you. There are these showers that are free. There's this cafe that has access to food. And so always working from what do they need, not the white savior, let me tell you what I can give you. But it's more like, what do you need? And then like working from the need and working with them to see like how like, what do you need so that we can work together, and what are the resources that I have? And it doesn't really take a lot, right? Our program really is the intersection of social justice issues, climate action, and making sure that these men have the resources that they need. But we bring in already established running groups in the city. And then we bring immigrants that are living in shelters, and we put them through a 10-week cycle where we run around the city different routes that will express different issues in our community. So incarceration rates between one block and the other, so that the running group that runs through that area every day will realize that, holy crap, like there's a lot of incarceration in this block because it's mostly Black people live in that block versus this very wealthy white neighborhood that has no incarceration rates. Or there's no tree canopy here, and there's also a food desert in this section. And so it's a program that helps both communities bridge together also their commonalities, their differences, but we're now also seeing how the allies, is what we call the running groups that are already established runners. The allies are actually now becoming guardians of some of our younger runners who are between the ages of 19 and 22, and they are actually helping them get their residency.
Wow.
Yeah. And so, and we're helping them with like eye doctors, and like if they have a toothache, or, you know, if they need help with a lawyer, like we try to hook them up. And so it's, you know, thanks to Powell for helping us also. And Hoka has been giving us shoes, and, you know, it's been such a like beautiful. Corinne Malcolm, for instance, has been such an incredible ally, has been sending me shoes for like 4 years now, and brand new shoes that I can give to different communities that have similar initiatives working with different people. Like we have the Hackensack Happy Feet, which are young middle schoolers that are now starting trail running. And it's a lot of newly arriving immigrants. And it's been beautiful. It started with 8 kids, and now we have 35.
Gosh.
And their parents that are running trails.
Oh, wow.
And so it's, you know, it doesn't take a lot. It takes time and trust, right? And so that's something that I've been building for years. And so people in the community trust me, so they know that if I come with something, it's going to be legit. And so we've done 2 cycles. We have now 32 runners in our program. Some of them are actually going to run a half marathon this fall, some of our guys. And so it's been beautiful, but it's also super scary to live in this time when at any point you could get stopped and detained. And it's been really, really stressful. And I think that running has been a tool for them to process the stress. And, you know, we have beautiful breakfast after the runs because we want to make sure that they're fed and that they feel loved and that they feel like they have a community. As doctors, you know that humans can't survive without touch. And that was something that really messed with me going into detention centers and not being able to touch kids and mamas that are telling you traumatic stuff, or in prisons and death row where you can't really touch anybody. And so this idea of someone living in a shelter that's 19 and is an orphan and hasn't received a hug in weeks, and just like giving them a hug is so meaningful and so simple. And being part of this running group where you wear the same shirt and you have beautiful new shoes and new socks is so simple, and something that we could all do, that it's been such, like, I feel so lucky that I get to do this.
If there's a listener who's hearing this and thinking, oh, I have a hookup to some socks, where can I send them? How can I help connect resources? Where should we point them?
At touchingland.org.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. And like, you know, our goal is to create a model that can be replicated. And so we were going to start a new program in Idaho. Someone was interested. They're a lawyer, but it's like everything is like a little bit at pause right now. I mean, not for me. Like, I'm going to keep doing the workshops, but I'm a lawyer and I'm comfortable with the information. I'm comfortable with my people. Like, I think it just requires a little bit of more guts, and there's a level of risk, but the risk is always there, right? These men are living in shelters, so they can be picked up at any moment. So for me, it's like, if I can give them a semblance of joy and belonging and a sense that somebody really cared and we were loved, even if they get deported and mistreated, at least they had this like moment of belonging and joy and connection. And to me, that's super important as someone that came to a new country and had to start over and, felt alone and felt like I don't belong and I have an accent and I have to start all over.
Yeah. Something you shed light on is just the guts and the risk it takes to kind of dive in and make change. I think it's very easy to sit back and be performative and talk about the change that needs to be made. But I think you're a true example of actually creating change and recognizing that it's not going to happen overnight. It's going to require a foundation, it's going to require effort, and it's going to require years of investment and resources. And I think that I can see a lot of parallels between that and trail running and building up to a 100-mile race. Like, you didn't step into the sport in 2021 and say, next week, next month, I'm running 100 miles. It took you a little bit to get there. So can you speak to your journey to 100 miles, specifically at Western States last year? And then, man, the jump to UTMB, that's huge because Western States and UTMB are not similar races. I know a lot of people will do the double in a year or do those races in back-to-back years, but they're very unique races and they require very different skill sets. So I'd love to hear your perspective on how you approached Western States, what that looked like for UTMB.
Yes. So my approach for Western States. So my first 100 was in November, the November before Western States. And I got invited in December by Hoka. And I was like, sure, I'll do it. I feel like my naivete has helped me tremendously in not realizing how hard things are. And for Western States, my coach was Rob Krar, who, has won Western States twice. And so I trained super hard and I don't know. I have to say that when I ran Western States, I was super prepared. I knew the course perfectly. I did the camp. I felt very ready. Completely the opposite for UTMB. I feel like I didn't have my estimated times the day before. I didn't really know what I was getting myself into. I got to Chamonix and I was like, holy shit, these mountains are so gigantic. And my husband was like, don't you want to sort of run up there and see how the terrain is? And I'm like, nope, I don't want to see. I want to see it because I'm not going to be able to sleep if I go see what's there. And so Western States, like, I feel like I didn't really go into the well for Western States because I trained so well. I felt so prepared. I knew what was coming. I had never been in Chamonix. I did a training camp in Flagstaff and felt like a hero for running 103 miles in a week with like 25,000 feet of elevation. Was like, yeah. I had no kids that week and I was like, oh my God, I could totally do this if I had no kids and no work. I felt super recovered. I was like, it's so easy. And oh my God. And then UTMB, I was like, why not? I have the stones. Let's go for it. And so Hoka graciously gave me the entry. I kind of forced them to. And, I remember them being like, are you sure you want to do UTMB? And Rachel, remember that I was like, I want to do TPL. And you were like, no, you don't want to do TPL. I was like, which one do I want to do? And she was like, I don't know. I remember you were like CCC maybe or UTMB. So I was like, yeah, let's do UTMB. It's like the loop, right? And so I feel like I had never heard of Western States until, I sort of had heard of it, but I didn't really know about it until they invited me. And I was like, oh yeah, this race sounds cool. And then I just really did not know what I was getting myself into with UTMB. And I knew enough that I bought a treadmill that goes 40% up. Cause I live in New Jersey where elevation 0. And I was like, yeah, I'll do that. And then I twisted my ankle in March and had an injury. I broke my ankle. I didn't break it, but I broke I had a tear too. And I couldn't train for 6 weeks. And so I was like, I'm going to be fine. I'll be fine. And so but I've been so busy this year that I couldn't dedicate, like normally my favorite time is sitting down and looking at the course and like prepping everything in the Excel sheets and like the gels and the food and like all of the things. And like, oh my God, I didn't do any of that. And I feel like my crew was also super busy because we're all parents and we're all like, half of them are experiencing perimenopause or menopause. And so they're like, hold on, there's a hot flash. And so, it's like we're all like a mess. And
Beautiful mess.
beautiful mess. I don't know how I did that. And so I think I walked into the race with blissful ignorance of what was awaiting me.
Quick break to thank Osprey for sponsoring this episode of the show. Osprey has been a leading maker of premium outdoor backpacks and bags for over 50 years. There are many reasons I turned to Osprey, but one is because of their pillars of sourcing sustainable materials. By incorporating recycled and Blue Sign approved materials into their products, they're helping to keep harmful chemicals out of our environment. Osprey has eliminated PFAS-based durable water repellent in 100% of their textile products, and as of fall 2024, 100% of Osprey's products have 100% recycled content in the lining fabric, and 99% of Osprey's products have 100% recycled content in the main body fabric. Osprey continues to reduce environmental impacts and produce more sustainably designed products every year. This is the type of company I want to support, and I know you do too. Learn more at osprey.com. Now back to the show.
That's amazing to hear, especially considering the conditions this year, because there was a 33% DNF rate. So I mean, you had to pass to DNF if you wanted it, given, how you were going into it. But I mean, talk a little bit about kind of how things unfolded and what you experienced out there.
It was a disaster. So like my pack was so big. And I was like, I need to get a lighter jacket. So I went to buy a lighter jacket that had space for the bag. And I was like, yes. 5 minutes before leaving the house to the start, I couldn't zip it up because the pack, like we needed a poofy, we needed an extra layer. It was thicker, it was bigger, and I couldn't close the freaking jacket. So I was like, oh my God, what, like, I can't run like this. I'm like this, and I can't breathe. So I started panicking and I was like, okay, I guess I'll figure it out. And, we sat down on the floor in the most uncomfortable position for like an hour, which I was like, great, this is not going to hurt my back at all. And then it was just sort of navigating. And I honestly didn't know what a small percentage of women run this race. It's only 14% female for UTMB.
It's terrible.
And so I was like, it's just dudes everywhere. I'm like, where are the girls? Maybe I'm just in like the section of the dudes. And, and for me, like trail running is like a social experience, right? And it's also where I go to like hang out and sing. And so it started raining the moment the race started. And I was like, oh my God, this jacket isn't working. So then I had to like take my vest off and put the jacket on, but I was already wet and everything was wet. And I get to the aid station, I guess it was Le Contamine, and I was soaked. And so I changed everything and I tell my crew, do you have my better jacket? And they're like, no. So I'm like, okay. So I put the wet jacket on again and it starts snowing. And I was just like, oh my God, someone's going to die. Someone's going to die. Don't look over there. It's a cliff. It's a cliff. And there's water coming down. I'm just like, oh my God, why am I doing this? And poles are broken and gloves and there's like food and things all over the trail. And I'm just like, oh my God, my poles could break. My poles can't break. And so like this whole panic, and then you're going through this much thick mud and you were just sliding everywhere. I fall 4 times. By the 4th time that I fall, my entire pack is full of mud. So I'm like, I should really try and get my gloves out. I take my gloves out and they're just drenched in water. And I'm like, okay, let me take my other gloves out. I take like the windproof gloves and it's just like water. So I'm like, okay, I guess I'll put my gloves. I have like trench hands and trench foot by the time that we end this little experience of like a disaster. It was just like nothing I have ever experienced. Wow. And I don't know how I wasn't cold, because I was completely
I'm
drenched.
impressed.
And,
I'm so impressed.
and then we got to the bottom. I guess I can't even remember what that was, what aid station that was before Courmayeur. And the sun came out and I was like, oh my God, this is what I was waiting for. And the mountains were amazing. And I was just like, oh my God, it's like Lord of the Rings. And I was like, do I take my phone out? Because it's like, it's raining still. I'm like, nothing can get wet. So I take out my battery bank and it's like swimming in water. So maybe not. Maybe let's put it back here. Oh my God. It was just like such a disaster. I lost my food 5 hours before. So I had no solids. I just had gels.
No.
And I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to create a sugar bomb. So I was like, do I have anything that I can eat? You know, so I get to the aid station and it's like chorizo or brie. And I'm like, I don't want either of these things. And so there was like, at least there was broth. And I was like, I'll just chug this cracker that tastes horrific. And I just kept going. I mean, it was just like a disaster after disaster. Like everything that could go wrong went wrong. And yeah, but my crew was amazing. Like my crew was super sweet. Like, you know, once the sun came out, I was able to change, but I somehow didn't have extra socks. It was a disaster. And my crew had to carry all my food. But I wasn't really eating. I'm like an expert at eating. I'm so good. That is something that I'm just like really good at, staying on my calories and my carbs and my electrolytes and my salts. And I really think Roctane Goo saved my life because you couldn't really take food out in the middle of snow and mud because like you couldn't stand because people were coming by you. And so you literally just could not eat. I had to just like trust that Roctane Goo would save me. And it did, in those conditions. But it was like that first night was absolutely insane. And then the sun came out and I think it got better, and not having to deal with rain and snow was amazing. But like my entire pack was wet. My gloves were wet. And so, you know, and you lose so much. My knees started getting thicker and just from all the stabilizer, like working out so hard. So I had blisters, and going down hills was just really hurtful. And going up the hill, I would pass all these guys and I'd be like, bye. Nobody ever said anything, you know, like encouraging, like, way to go, which is usually what happens, you know, here in the trails. It was just really, you know, serious European men. And I had legs left, I feel like, till the end going up, but downhill, the technical trails, it's so technical. I feel like I need an apology from Corrine Malcolm, who was like, the trails are beautiful. There's only a few sections that are technical. Oh my God. The last 10 miles are horrific.
Nobody talks about that section enough. I'm glad you are talking about it and highlighting it because it is really, really tough terrain, and it like is reminiscent of New England roots, rocks, East Coast trails here, but they occur when you least expect it and when you least want it to occur. And especially if you've lost your quads or lost your feet like you did, it's terrible.
It was horrible. And I was like, once I got to La Flagère, I was like, yes, because we go through horrible like boulders where I saw two people fall and they were bleeding. And I was just like, oh my God. Then some guy in the trails like was using his phone. I'm like, what are you doing, man? Like, where's your lamp? He's like, oh no, one drowned and the other one died. And so I'm like, so you're using the iPhone? He was using that 3 hours on that. And, you know, so I gave him I had 3 lights because I always have issues with lights in every race. So I had a backup and I gave it to him, but it was just like, you would think the terrain would get easier and then it would be like, surprise, it's boulders. Or it would be like, now you have to cross 2 rivers and also unsturdy rocks with glacier water going down. So hopefully you don't fall. So it would just be like more and more things. And by like hour like 35, your brain is just not really like clicking very well. And so that's when the hallucinations began. And it was insane.
Tell us about those.
Oh my gosh. It's so funny. It was Sesame Street. I don't know why. But I would see a rock and it would be Elmo. And then I would see another stump and it would be like Oscar the Grouch. And then it would be like, Big Bird. And so I would be going up and I'd be like, oh my God, don't get distracted. You gotta look. No, oh, that's Big Bird. No. And then like dolphins and all sorts of animals. And like your brain just starts filling in the gaps with like things and it was all animals. Thank God it wasn't something scary, but it was something as like sweet and gentle as Sesame Street. It was crazy because like I'd be like Chihuahua, dragon, just like, and I'd be like, no, focus. And once I was done, I was taking a shower and on the wall, like on the marble, I just saw like pictures of my kids. And then at some point, I don't remember this, but my husband, Tom, was like, I called him and I said, hey, I just saw a picture of our daughter, Elle, playing roller derby. She should play roller derby. That should be a sport she should check. Like she looks really happy in that picture. And so just so crazy.
The prophecy.
Mind is telling you need to rest because this makes no sense.
That is wild. It sounds like, they call Western states life in a day, but it sounds like UTMB is really like life in 2 days, and you experienced all spans of life in those nearly 2 days out there. I think the cutoff for UTMB is 46 and a half hours. You finish in the 45-hour time range. That's a long time to be out there. And we always say on the podcast here, like, it's an absolutely different sport. Like on the live streams, we often see the highlight of the front of the pack. We're talking about these guys finishing in like 19, 20 hours. You're out there for double the time, having what sounds like double the experience, but you don't give up. And I love to see that. Like we just recorded a podcast yesterday where we were talking about these A, B, and C goals. And oftentimes you hear people say like their C goal is just to finish the race. And there's this like caveat with the word just in front of finish, like just finish. But I think finishing is like all the glory in itself, is completing the loop of UTMB. You faced so many challenges out there. And like, I haven't heard you say that you wanted to quit yet, which I think is really, really inspiring. Did any of those thoughts ever come into your mind whenever, your power bank was drowning and all your food was gone?
I think like at the first 10 miles, I hate the first 20 miles because I feel horrible. And then once sort of like my body and my mind are like, this is what we do now. I feel like I'm like, okay, this is what we do. And so I'm able to really like go in fully, but it usually like takes me about 20 miles to just sort of let go, I guess. So like those first 20 miles, I was like, I might need to like quit this, but I really wanted to see the views. And I wanted to see like the bulls and I wanted to see the flowers. And I mean, I had like a 42-hour goal really. And after the storm, I was like, screw this. I'm just going to like take pictures of everything. I'm going to like enjoy it, like meet people, talk, just sort of take pictures of the sky at night. Right. Cause it's what we don't get to do on the everyday. And so I feel like for me, it's more about like the bugs and being in to see the sky in the middle of nowhere and feel safe, right? Because like if something happens, I can be rescued. So I feel like this is such a wonderful way of experiencing the world and nature in a different way. And the volunteers and like the energy and the stories of people and like cheering for friends. Like I'd get on the app and I'd be like, my God, which I would never do in like a competitive, like if I'm competing really, really, like I'd be like, go. But here I was like, let me see how my friend is doing. And so at that point, I just kind of embraced it and was like, I'm just going to finish this thing and I'm just going to enjoy myself. And I got a little stressed by the end because that last like 7 miles are just coming down from La Flagere are just so awful. And I saw 2 ankle twists. And so I was like, I'm just going to take my time and it's just going to be what it's going to be. And, it was, I had to go to the bathroom really badly before the finish. And that's all I could think about. So I was like, this is not how I imagined the ending. I need a bathroom. So it's just, but it was really lovely to like have my crew there and just like experience all the craziness and have my kids there. And they bonded with other people that were running at the same pace that I was. And now like we're friends and talking and like they were so proud, and they're still so proud that I finished this thing, that
Aw.
it's like I love that, you know, that I think for me it really is about the stories and the bugs and the people and the views, and sort of like I kept thinking how, you know, I'm choosing this hard. And I think Hillary Girardi is the one that said to me earlier. She's like, remember that we choose our hard, and that's such a privilege to be able to choose this and to have food and have support, when so many of the people I live with and I work with and the people that are my community, immigrants, travel with no headlamps and no food and no idea where they're going to end up, and they do it for months. You know, it takes them 3 to 4 months to travel, and so we get to do this. And so, yeah, so for me, it's more about the joy and the building community and bringing more people like me to these spaces, so that they can also enjoy the trails this way.
Yeah, that's such a great perspective. It's like we choose that struggle, we choose those challenges, even though like they seem impossible in the moment. It's very much a privilege to have your power bank swimming in water
Yeah.
whenever got a little bit to go, because you've got backup replacements on you. Yeah, I loved when you talked about the differences in racing in Europe versus the States in terms of the people around you, the community. UTMB feels very male dominated. It also feels very serious, like you mentioned. And in the States, you're often like really becoming buddies with the people around you. It sounds like you found a lot of joy in the energy of the volunteers, the aid stations, your crew, your family out there. Talk a little bit about your crew, because it seems like you had
Yes.
quite the group of people surrounding you, and you also had your family out there. And right before we started recording, we talked a little bit about your journey back to the States, like immediately after UTMB, pretty much. Because you're a mom and your kids have school and you're a working professional and you've got a lot going on. So I think that will resonate a lot with our listeners to hear about the people you choose to surround yourself with, but also the return to normalcy back here in the States.
Yes. Yes. I mean, I did. So like, while the atmosphere is definitely different, I did make like 4 friends, all guys. I never ran with
Hey,
women. Like they were never there, but I became really good friends with these 4 different guys at different times. And that was kind of lovely, because I was like, oh my God, it's been like 15 hours and I've talked to nobody. I'm so bored. You know, and I blurt out singing and nobody would like join me or anything. I was like, come on, man. But my crew is amazing. So my crew, 2 of the same women that crewed me for Western States came with me, Len and Robin. And funny enough, I never run with them. They're both my friends. They're both really good with spreadsheets. Robin and I are very close. But they don't really know me as a runner. Like they haven't spent enough time as a runner with me, but they're just like really good. They understand they're women. They understand that I could get my period at any point. You know, that kind of thing. And then Sean, who is my best friend, my best trail friend, I run with him every day, and 3 other guys we run with. And he was able to come. He couldn't come for Western States, but he was able to come to UTMB. Like he knows me really well, and I get mad at him. And like you know, by the last aid station, I was like, you need to give me some real food and stop giving me these potatoes that have been alive for 5 days. And so like he was like, I'm gonna get you. I was like, everybody has gnocchi and hamburger and French fries, and all I want is a French fry. And he went and found like a hot dog on a baguette, and I almost cried when I ate it. And just like the most patient people, and they had such a good time. And it was just so funny, because it's so different, right? And they're crewing in the middle of the night most of the time, and in remote places where you can't just like go out to the corner and like buy whatever. And so these are things that we didn't really research, you know? And they had to take like 30 buses to see me, and they saw me in so many aid stations and places, and they were super sweet. They got my running club, which is mostly road, to send me videos of encouragement. And so they sent me videos, and so he'd show me videos when I was like, I'm an hour late. I'm going to miss my goal, because I'm very strict about timing and like pacing. I'm really good about pacing myself and really meeting my goals. and I wasn't meeting my goals towards the middle, even though I had made peace with it. I was like, oh my God, like I can't be so close to cutoffs. I hate this. But he would try to divert my thinking. And yeah, they were just amazing. And my kids were just so sweet. And my husband, who's never like, he had always told me to run trails. And I'd be like, I'm an asphalt girl. Like, I like predictability. I like that it's flat, it's nice. And now it's really funny because this experience, I think Western was amazing, but I feel like this experience with the magnitude of the mountains, and it's just so hard to imagine that you did all of that climbing in those conditions of snow and rain and then sunny and roots. And it's just so crazy that I feel like this morning he was sitting looking at this book and he's like, I think I should choose your next race. We should go. So I feel like that's it's become sort of like a family thing now, and it's really sweet. But yeah, I feel like so lucky that I think when I started trail running and I wanted to do longer distance, I really didn't have anybody to ask. And I know that this is like a real issue for people that, we're parents. Like, my friends don't have time. They're away from their kids. We all flew and our kids started school the next day. So after finishing at 3 p.m. on Sunday, I had to jump on a plane. I had to drive to Geneva at 5 a.m. and jump on a plane at 9 so that the kids could go to school the next day and make sure everything they needed for school was ready. And it's a reality, right? The same as the reality of I didn't know who I could bring to crew me on my first 100. So I actually asked my coach at the time to come with me. I was like, I'll pay you whatever I need to pay you because I don't really know how to do this. And like, I don't have friends that can come and spend 2-3 days with me. And like, I keep seeing this in the boards where people are like, how do I do these things without having people that can help me? And so I wish there was like a way that we could make sure that specifically women also could feel like they're supported, that they have people that can help them. So like I said, Lynn and Robin, I'm not super close with them. Like, they know me, but they don't really know me as a runner. Like, my strengths or like my moods. Sean knows me very well. He knows my moods. He knows exactly if I'm tired, if I'm thirsty, because like, he sees me every day for the last 3 years. He knows my running. And so it was really nice to have him there because he was able to sort of know what I needed. But yeah, it was an amazing experience. And yeah, just really fun and amazing that the body can do all the things it can do.
Truly, like, incredible experience. And I hate asking this question because you should absolutely relish in your post-race afterglow and these memories that you collected. But since you brought it up and your husband said he gets to choose your next race, I'm curious what he's thinking or what you're thinking for your next endeavor after you've just completed truly the pinnacle of the sport.
I really want to do Mount Fuji.
Oh,
and I really think Lavorado was one. I was looking at Lavorado before UTMB, and I can't remember who I was talking with, and they were like, "Why don't you just do UTMB?" And I was like, "Yeah, what?
yeah,
Sure,
why don't I?
sure, why not?" It's been so funny how the year before Western States, my bestie who lives in California that I do a lot of runs with, we travel and do runs. She was like, why don't you try Western States next year? And I feel like we just did not understand, obviously. Like, we did not understand. And I was like, yeah, I should do that one. That's like nice somewhere in California, right? She's like, yeah, it's really fun. I hear like great things about it. And it is insane that I ended up doing it that next year. Equally insane and really good that I was super naive going into this race, being like, yeah, I can do that. And doing it. Yeah.
I think that's the perspective that we all need to have in the sport, though, is just that, yeah, I can do that. Like, naive perspective of we can do whatever we set our minds to, even if it is this completely outlandish idea. UTMB probably felt completely wild to you after signing up and training on your treadmill in New Jersey and getting in the training that was required to close the loop but you did it, and you conquered so many mini battles out there that not many people, especially women and especially immigrant women, can say that they've done. I think if you filter the UTMB results and look across the different countries, you see the results extremely dominant by males, number one, but also like French and European countries, a lot of United States representation this year, but there's a few countries I saw that had their first representation at UTMB. And I do think UTMB is doing a better job of expanding their reach to other countries. But I think it's really cool to see the journey that you had out there. And then also your ability to spread your experience and your journey with other people. It's extremely inspiring.
Aw, thank you. Yeah, it's been really, like, I love this community. Of course, there's so much work to do, right? It's not diverse enough, but like we were saying earlier, it really takes time. And there are a lot of people that are doing really hard work to make it different and to put in the work. It just takes time, right? And I'm very lucky that I have the resources to do these crazy races. I know there are other people out there that would love to do these races that don't have the resources. So I feel like that's where brands and race directors and so on should really think about, okay, if I really want to make this diverse, and perhaps we can have a few slots where we pay for lodging, or we pay for travel, or we pay for, right? There's so many ways of seeing how to build community. I just think sometimes, like, we think we know what's best and we don't let the experts or people that know best to do it. But I think that that's a lesson that you learn as you're slowly growing. And,
Totally.
and you have to just like be willing to take a risk, and you're going to mess up. I mean, we all mess up. I think that that's such an American weakness, to always know everything and never change your mind. We can change our minds at any point, right? I think that's such a beautiful thing, to be like, actually, I'm not perfect and I don't know everything. And actually now I know more. And so I want to change my mind. And so I feel like more people have to have that flexibility. Yeah, I mean, the trail world has been really, really welcoming to me, really loving. And it was very different in Europe, not as welcoming and not as sort of loving. But the volunteers and the people I spoke with were so kind. And, I made friends, maybe not at the same rate as the US, but also I speak Spanish and English and not French and German. But I feel very lucky and very happy to be part of this community.
Well, I think the community is extremely lucky to have you in it. Carolina, we're so grateful that you joined us on the podcast today. I'm feeling completely recharged and inspired by all the work that you've done. And I know our listeners can agree that, sometimes it seems like initiatives, advocacy seems like it's a lot more than you can bite off and attack. But I think you've lit a fire under myself. And I know everybody listening out there that like change can be small. And it can be meaningful, and it can also grow over time. And I think you're complete representation of that. And I'm thrilled to hear about your UTMB experience. What a journey out there, and very excited to see what you attack next, because I think you're such a force.
Aw, thank you so much. Yeah, I'm excited, and like, it's I will give a shout out to Jordan from Rising Hearts, because I think she has been an incredible person that has done such amazing change in our trail world and continues to do it. And I feel like she doesn't get enough credit for the work that she does, because she's not like like, I'm doing this. Because I feel like so much happens behind closed doors that nobody really sees and knows about. And I think when your intention really is to build change, it's not about promoting it, right? Like, nobody knows all the work that we do behind closed doors, because our goal is to actually bring change and not to promote whatever it is that we're doing. And so I shout out to her, and also to Corinne and Chloe, who have been, and I think Hoka as well. They've been so instrumental and supportive and so caring and loving, that I'm super grateful that people continue to believe,
Absolutely.
Yeah. And thank you to both of you, with your tiny babies and wearing all the hats. use both of you as examples of how badass you are to be professionals, to be now moms, to be these badass runners. I think that we don't give enough credit to the women in the trail world, and like this balancing all of the things. I think it's a lot. I do think that for me, it's all of the hats that I wear really sort of weave in together. And when there's a problem in the trail, it's like, okay, no, it's kind of like when your kid is throwing up and pooping and that was the last diaper and you don't have any wipes because you used the last wipe and you're in a public place and you're like, oh my God. And then your other kid is like eating something from the floor and you're like, oh my God. And it feels so the battery drowned. So what?
Puts things in perspective for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you guys so much for having me.
You're amazing. Thanks for your time.
Thanks again, Carolina, for joining us on today's podcast. What a great conversation, and I hope our listeners enjoyed it as much as I did. You can follow Carolina on her social channels. You can also find her Touching Land organization on Instagram. Thanks again to our listeners for being there, for sending messages, comments. If you want to connect with Carolina, please do. We'll be happy to connect you as well. Until next time, thanks.